give everyone a chance to get settled and organized. So, everybody having a good day so far? Enjoying your Friday? We're all working on a research project, I'm hoping. So yeah, now that people are generally seated, more or less, we're gonna start going into our presentation. So, hi, my name is Victor.
I am Philip.
Sandy.
And our assignment for the historical analysis was Adult Swim. Adult Swim is the most modern aspect of animation you can see nowadays. And we're going to go further in depth with it, starting now.
Okay, so what is Adult Swim? You need an explanation of it. Okay, so this is what it actually is. Adult Swim is based off the content of adult-oriented content, whether there's action shows or it's cartoons. Now, if this name comes deeply from the concept of adult-only swimming hours, in which adults can leisurely enjoy their own swimming pools in an environment that's typically dominated by children, and this is what Adult Swim typically represents. Now, it started from within the 1990s through Hanna-Barbera to a new era. So, Turner Broadcasting at this time, this is 1990s, it's doing relatively well for itself, and it recently acquired the Hanna-Barbera Animation Studio. So you know about this animation studio, they make really classic cartoons like Scooby-Doo and Flintstones. So, during this time, Turner Broadcasting has its huge collection of shows, and it doesn't know what to do with it. So it has the bright idea to start an exclusively television channel that focuses entirely on cartoons, called Cartoon Network. Now, it has all these classics, but there's a problem. It only shows, at this time, it only shows reruns of the same old shows. There's no original programming. So what they decide to do is, producer Mike Laszlo has the bright idea to start repurposing old Hanna-Barbera cartoons to produce new content. Now, as a sort of reflection of late night TV shows, he decides to premiere a lot of these shows late at night as stealth premieres. And one of the greatest examples of this, and one of the first, is Space Ghost Coast to Coast, a parody talk show with postmodern traits. Now, it's used the old Space Ghost cells in order to repurpose and revitalize the sort of ideas of what a cartoon can be. And it became extremely popular with the audience despite being no announcement and despite being in the late night hours. And its spin-offs, such as Aqua Teen Hunger Force, became even more popular than the original. And its success within the Cartoon Network actually started to spiral even more similarly recycled animation shows such as C-Lab 2021 and Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. Now, during this time, Adult Swim has gained massive success for its risque humor and its unique content, and it officially premiered as its own entity in December of 2000. It goes on and on for good years, having great content and great new shows. And as a result of its more risque humor, as it starts to build up, and its more controversial and more risque shows, Adult Swim has a bright idea to separate Adult Swim officially from Cartoon Network as its own entity. So it has its own Nielsen ratings, and it's officially independent from the network it actually is, but still on the same channel in 2005. And now, it has the largest total young adult audience in any cable network. It is expanded far beyond its original time slot of 11 to 6. It is now 8 to 6, and has 14.62 million viewers currently of spring 2017. Okay, now we're focusing on the sort of aspects of animation that Adult Swim revitalizes, our so-called renaissance.
And one really important aspect of Adult Swim is that it has 3 large factions that we decided to focus on. One of them that I'm focusing on would be Toonami, and how through Toonami, the large portion of America was really influenced towards Eastern animation, Eastern culture, through shows like Dragon Ball Z and Naruto, which I'm assuming all you know about because of or through shows like Toonami. And Philip will be focusing on?
I'll be focusing on experimental animation with the more interesting and more avant-garde shows. And Sandy?
Mine is Robot Chicken, which is stop motion.
Now, Adult Swim is unique because it's not any one thing. It has many genres and many kinds of animation to show each kind of genre. It's the most contemporary and has the biggest umbrella for all of us to fit, for all kinds of media to fit in, which is why our presentation will be kind of long and has a lot of clips, because there's no one clip that truly can capture all of it that well, because there's so many different branches of it. So that's why we're going to have several clips throughout, which will show you how people combine old and new mediums to target modern day audiences. So the first thing we're going to focus on is Toonami. Toonami was created in 1997 by a small group of animators who worked for Cartoon Network, and they were given the chance to do so to create a kind of after-school special. Now, initially it was not Toonami, it was areas like Power Zone, Super Adventures, but these did not really work as well. So when Toonami finally came around, they began to focus more on anime and video games and things like that, because this is a target audience that had not been previously addressed. And when it began to finally gain traction, to gain more and more steam, it became very popular through shows like, as I mentioned previously, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, One Piece, etc. And it continued until about 2004, where it moved from after-school special to Saturday night transition. And at that time, it would play from 11 p.m. to like 4 a.m., so the late night hours. And that way, it was targeted more towards young adults instead of children as an after-school special. Unfortunately, it died in 2008. It was canceled by Cartoon Network, but Adult Swim brought it back in 2012. And ever since then, Toonami has been getting more and more popular because of the loyal fan base it created when it first started. Now, going into like why Toonami was able to fail as a show and then come back was because of how it treated anime and its audience. It had a sense of respect, which many shows did not have at the time for anime. Because even nowadays, there's still a stigma that anime is meant for little kids or it's a cartoon, and that's one of the stigmas we've been trying to fight against in this entire class and learning how cartoons are not just for children. Now, the show treated anime with a sense of respect, but it also treated the audience with respect. There is the host, Tom, who hosted the show, which I will go into later, who talked to the audience and treated them not as, oh, you're a little kid, it treated them as an adult viewer because that is who was actually watching the show. And one aspect Toonami really went into is that anime is not a genre. Because you can like Dragon Ball Z, but not like Sailor Moon. Dragon Ball Z is a much more fighting-based anime, and Sailor Moon is one that's focused more towards girls at the time. So even if you didn't like one kind of genre, you could like another, and that's how the anime is proven to be a style that many people did not acknowledge at the time. And through this and the respect that the Toonami gave to the audience and towards the media, they were able to kind of gain a really loyal fan base, which became known as Toonami Faithful, which is able to bring it back in 2012. Now, Tom, as you can see here, was the host. You'll see what he does later in the final clip of Toonami, but he was the host of the show, and he would sit in this big chair and say, well, tonight coming up, we have shows X, Y, and Z from so-and-so and so-and-so, and in his big chair, he was in a spaceship, and then people wondered, what's in the spaceship? What's happening? And throughout the 20 years Toonami has existed, he has gone through several different animation styles, and you can see how CGI has advanced as a result of that, because in the beginning, he was designed for little kids, because that's why he's like cute, has a little pot belly, and can waddle around. But towards the end, he seems more like a Master Chief kind of figure from the Halo franchise. And Toonami's Tom is also especially important because Toonami is the only show that has its own plot line. Because it's not really, it's not like Naruto or Dragon Ball Z where it has a plot line of its own. Toonami is a block of Adult Swim. And because of this, they gave Tom his own series. As you look in the top right, you see that he's walking around with a gun. That's because every year they would give Toonami's Tom an 11 to 12 minute like intruder event where they would put out a poll weeks in advance, and Adult Swim fans, Toonami fans, would actually go and vote like what they wanted to happen, what to see. And then from there, Tom would be in his spaceship, broadcasting the shows to Earth, and then he would get an alert, something's happening on the spaceship, and he'd have to go confront the intruder, which is why it was called the Intruder series. Now, there are many experimental aspects of Toonami, and Philip will go further more into those later, but Toonami is created by a small group of people, and even though it was started in 1997 and is still going until today, even after its cancellation and its revamp, the people who were still part of the original crew came back to keep working on it because they were so passionate about it. And because it was such a good platform, they could release what kind of ever animation they wanted. It wasn't like typical TV channels where they would just change from one show to the next. They would try and put their own kind of animations, and they could change it, whether they want to be CGI or stop motion. They would do whatever they could to make the transitions more appealing. And this is one of the examples of what Toonami is like now.
Toonami's new rundown is ready to launch.
Tom is there, and you can see the spaceship that he has.
Nope.
Dragon Ball Super punches in at 11.
Not even you can stand this for long! DBZ Kai annihilates 11:30.
JoJo goes platinum at midnight.
Now, as you can see, there are more adult themes because of the fighting that's occurring. But notice how they're not treating it like it's a kids show, and they give it more respect than all other shows originally did, which is why Toonami was able to succeed. And you can see how the animation style varies from one to the next because of what kind of programs they use at the time.
Evidence strikes hard at 2.
Outlaw Star blasts off at 2:30.
And you can see that it goes very late, which is why it became the late night Saturday programs.
Controls people by bombarding them with information. Attack on Titan tears it all down at 3:30.
Toonami.
Tonight from 11 to 4. Here ends the lesson.
So you can see, like, more or less, that was a very good video which encapsulates what Toonami is nowadays. And that is my portion on Toonami, and next we're going to go into...
Okay, so Robot Chicken is a show produced by Seth Green and Matthew Sinrick. And while they didn't have any background in stop motion animation, they revitalized it as a genre for the millennials today. And the show was mainly quick sketches ranging from a minute to 5 minutes, and it used puppetry, claymation, and plastic toys. And while like stop motion would generally be like considered as like a kids genre, because like movies like Rudolph and
The Night
Frosty
Before
the Snowman,
Christmas
yeah,
as
that it brought a unique sense of dark and crude humor to the genre, and it oftentimes mocks pop culture, and it can kind of like seem like a 21st century of Spunkmeyer.
I'm so happy because I'm a gummy bear, gummy bear.
Oh, I guess there's only one way out of this. Goodness, I taste delicious.
That wasn't bad at all.
Gummy bear, pretend it is delicious, you'll chew off your own leg.
So yeah, like I can definitely see Spunkmeyer doing that. Next is how the actual animation is produced. So what's interesting about this is that they never produce one single episode like per day. They'll produce individual scenes from a lot of episodes, and they first start with a storyboard, and they'll like draw out each scene for the day. And next, they will make the actual toys. This seems a little grotesque, but like a lot of the like store-bought toys are too flimsy, so when they move it around a lot, it'll deteriorate. So what they do is they'll use latex and make a mold of it, and then they'll insert these wires into it so they can move around the joints. And they combine the new and the old, so they'll use like stop motion, which is obviously like an old animation style, and then they'll like insert like trick cuts. So you can see here, there's a green screen in the back. So after they film this, they'll like add the sky or like whatever they want in the background, and it's a lot easier than animating that through stop motion. And they have these mouth stickers that they stick onto the characters instead of actually moving their mouths, because it's just a lot of work and that's a lot easier. So Robot Chicken is actually featured in a lot of things. For example, the Simpsons couch gag, like what we talked about last week. And it's really cool because it's like a melting pot for all of the mixed medias. And like you can see there, it's like cartoon, but then it's going off stage, and it's like very self-aware. And Seth Green also produced the Lego Movie end credit scene. And what's interesting about this is that the rest of the movie had a lot of CGI, but this, he produced it just with stop motion because he didn't want a lot of compositing, which is combining two scenes together.
Okay, now we're on the portion of experimental animation. Now, throughout its creation, Curation has sort of like a history of avant-garde and its production of more abstract and more experimental ideas, because Adult Swim is a unique platform in which these sort of more abstract shows can only exist on this platform. Now, because of its tolerance for experimentation, it allows for more exploration into the different themes of animation that is previously not really delved into with other more contemporary shows, such as like chromophotography, metamorphosis, cinema attractions, and psychedelic animation. And all of these themes will be thoroughly more explained throughout next slide. Okay, so one of the first cable shows with like a very amateur animation style is 12 Ounce Mouse. So 12 Ounce Mouse is a show that was made in 2005 with a shoestring budget, and it was made purely because of its pure show. It's basically, here's a polite way to put it. It's not good animation. It's made crudely, it's made fast, it's made in the worst style possible. But it's the first show to do this because it is purely a cinema attraction show. You watch it for the pure spectacle of seeing a show that's basically made by almost kindergartners, at least that style. Now, another show that shows that aspect is Xavier Renegade Angel. That is a show made purely with CGI and with motion captioning. Now, because it's not a multi-million dollar show, it is made poorly textured and poorly done, but it shows like what you can do with an animated show on a cable TV show budget. And now, there's one show that particularly encompasses many of the animation archetypes. Is shows called Off the Air. Off the Air is a show where animators from all over the world can submit their content directly to the Off the Air producers, and they'll play it. They'll also add it in. They'll edit it, and they'll see what works and what can be made. And it allows for a lot of the more interesting material. But now there's this idea of like sort of metamorphosis throughout this whole clip. There's also the sense of plasticity with like objects not really holding their own physical boundaries. They stretch, they bounce, they however they want. There's this idea of cinema attraction with the sights, and this idea of metamorphosis throughout the show in its multiple clips. And this definitely psychedelic animation definitely inspired this type of show. And with this new age idea and this new age way of style. Okay. And next is going to be the embodiment of a lot of Adult Swim's ideas, Rick and Morty.
So Rick and Morty, as I hope many of you know, is one of the more popular Adult Swim shows that's out right now. And Adult Swim is interesting because it takes a lot of the old and new and combines it. So it'll have scenes and elements of the psychedelic, but it uses a new animation process through an animation program called Toon Boom, which is what the creators now use. And Rick and Morty, for those who haven't seen it, it's basically a show about an alcoholic grandfather named Rick, who's a brilliant scientist, who takes his grandfather Morty on many adventures throughout space.
So the show began when Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland met through Channel 101, which is Dan Harmon's like monthly non-profit film festival that he hosts. And Justin Roiland submitted his piece, The Real Animated Adventures of Doc and Marty, kind of as a joke and a way to shock people because he got in trouble with Bill Cosby's lawyers because of his show House of Cosby's. So he decided like might as well just piss everyone else off by making a show inspired by Doc Brown and Marty McFly from Back to the Future. But when Adult Swim contacted Dan Harmon to create a 30-minute animated series, Dan Harmon was like, Justin Roiland is hilarious, like you have to like produce this with me. So that's how it began.
And this is the very first like adaptation they had of it.
Marty, drop whatever you're doing. I gotta tell you about a comic book called Scud the Disposable Assassin. But Doc, I'm right in the middle of standing all alone by myself in this darkened room. I'm having a whole lot of fun. Marty, I know that's important, but it can wait. All right, you talk me into it. What's this comic all about? Marty, just relax a little bit. I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know. I'm gonna turn up your hearing aid, Marty. All right, first things first, Marty. Scud the Disposable Assassin is a comic book about Scud robots. And Scud robots are assassins that kill people. And you hire them by putting some quarters into a vending machine. And the vending machines are sitting out there on the side of the street. Can you believe that, Marty? Wow! So if I wanted somebody dead, say my grandnanny, all I'd have to do is put some coins in a vending machine, and then Scott will come out and kill her off for me, and then I don't have to take her to the bingo machine, bingo nights anymore, and then she'll die. That's right, Marty. It's that simple.
So while the show now is not as insane, it definitely has elements from that.
Now, the creators here, as mentioned earlier, were Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland. And we talked a little about Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon, but Dan Harmon was originally a writer on the show The Community, and it's a comedy sitcom. And he did a really good job with that, but eventually he was forced off the show, which made a lot of the viewers upset. But when he started making Rick and Morty with Adult Swim, he kind of dragged the fan base from the Community also over to Adult Swim. That's why this aspect of Rick and Morty is able to get so large and so popular. And in addition, because it is Adult Swim and because of the kind of writing styles these two creators have, they go through various parodies throughout the show. And Rick and Morty itself is a parody of Back to the Future, as previously mentioned. But in various episodes, you'll notice that there are parodies of other smaller things. And this is a clip of Justin Roiland, which Sandy can explain more about.
So he actually voices both Rick and Morty, and how he voiced them is he just gets drunk off tequila and just starts spewing random stuff.
Oh, I missed.
This little baby guy. I'm gonna tell you where to stick it. Because... Got it. See, that sounds too sober.
And a lot of times he'll go off the
I
script.
don't believe it. I don't believe it.
137.
I hear a bunch of screaming demons. Is that just me? My lips are chapped. Who's got chapstick? Here to explain. It's a little bobo boo.
Can you try to read this one on script?
Yeah, fuck you. Christ. What happens when we die? What happens when we all die? You guys worry about that shit at night? Alright, forget it. I'm drunk. Shit. I'm gonna need another shot to do this.
Now, if you haven't noticed, if you guys have seen the show, I hope many of you have, he more or less embodies like what Rick is in this aspect, because he is inebriated, yes, and he often goes off on tangents and are very nihilist in view, like what is the world, where do we stand, what is everything about, and that's one of the really core aspects of Rick and Morty, which kind of makes it popular, because it has dark humor, but it also brings in this kind of like postmodern belief, and it's like nothing really matters in the end, and everyone's kind of like, especially when it's targeted towards young adult audiences like ourselves, because we don't know where we fit in the world, and we're trying to figure that out, and this kind of goes into that. Click this live note there. So it's also very self-aware in various episodes, like especially at the end of season 1, Rick and Morty talks to the audience saying, yeah, Rick and Morty is season 2, forever and ever, it's gonna come next year, see you guys in a year from now. It's very self-aware, and I know that the target audience, young adults nowadays, are very much enjoy the aspect of breaking the fourth wall and how self-aware the shows can be when they talk to the individuals. And it's also a synthesis of sorts, because it brings in lots of dark humor together as well as lots of light humor. But this aspect, this is one clip which I think is really important, that has a nihilist view that's shown throughout a lot of Rick and Morty.
Hey, you doing okay?
Now here, Rick and Morty also has that family sitcom feel to it, which is shown through the brother and the sister, which is shown in this scene.
Can I show you something?
Morty, no offense, but a drawing of me you made when you were 8 isn't gonna make me feel like less of an accident.
That out there, that's my grave.
Wait, what?
On one of our adventures, Rick and I basically destroyed the whole world. So we bailed on that reality and we came to this one, because in this one, the world wasn't destroyed. And in this one, we were dead. So we came here and we buried ourselves and we took their place. And every morning, Summer, I eat breakfast 20 yards away from my own rotting corpse.
So, you're not my brother?
I'm better than your brother. I'm a version of your brother you can trust when he says don't run. Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV.
Now, and that one important aspect of that is like the nihilist view, as you notice, you see that throughout the show, but occasionally the producers will throw this one really hard-hitting emotional scene with you, so that way you can kind of relate to them you like it better. And that is our presentation on Adult Swim. Do you have any? Thank you. Do you want to clap? You don't have to clap. Your choice. Yes, questions.
The reason why do you have so many sources? Is it because it's really hard to find? All
Yes,
of this?
because
Or, okay.
well, with Adult Swim
Yeah.
is not one genre, as we've tried to mention previously. It's many different aspects because we had to look because we had a one cite every video we posted. In addition, we had to do the research we did into them. So for researching the creators, we had to go research that, and that was just for Rick and Morty. Toonami had its own different branch of animation history because it was had its own genre to go into, as did Robot Chicken and Experimental. There were just so many aspects of Adult Swim that we had to research a lot.
Also, the material is very contemporary in regards of a lot of older animation styles. So there's not exactly one source with all the information that we need in a scholarly report. That's why we had to bounce around through a lot of different sources to find what we needed and what sort of fit in together.
Yeah, a lot of my sources I got from interviews.
Similarly, yes. Yes.
Was there a cartoon called Camp Laszlo on Cartoon Network, something like it?
Yeah.
Because I know one of the producers out there was named Mick Laszlo.
Yes.
I'm just curious.
Mick Laszlo has produced a lot of different cartoons throughout Cartoon Network, and he originated started with Space Ghost Coast, but he's also transitioned from Adult Swim to back to Cartoon Network with a lot of other shows.
Yeah.
You said that they do the audio for Rick and Morty after the guy gets drunk. So do they do the animation after the audio? Or do they do it?
Well, they try and like with anything, they do a storyboard first. So anytime he has to voice Rick, he does become inebriated because that is the character of Rick. So more often than not, they'll do the storyboard first and then do the animation, and then they can put the voice behind it. That's why they have him take several cuts. If you had noticed, can you try that again with this? So they do the animation sequencing first, and then they'll put the voice acting behind that.
But there is a series, the TV series, in the show where it's just these weird ads, and it's they actually just get drunk and then they film those. And then one of them, it's there are ants in my eyes.
Oh yes. If you got that clip we showed you, that had the very dark ending, it was from an episode called 60 Minutes. Instead of 60 minutes, it's Rixty because of the puns. And in this one, Rick gets a TV box that has TV channels from different realities, and that entire episode is basically just different shows from different episodes that they just made randomly. So in, let's say, reality XYZ, you have this random TV show, and as Sandy mentioned, they would just get drunk and film those, and then they would animate afterwards. Any other questions about Toonami experimentalism?
So a common
Yes.
component, I think, to the three sections was this sense of audience interaction or something, where they're sort of attentive to their viewers. Is that, do you think, atypical more broadly? Is that unique to the programming block?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it is. There's a lot of audience interaction between Adult Swim and its audience specifically because it always encourage viewers to call in, message, email, Twitter. It's always caused the interaction between the two networks. And they also show a lot of clips and work of arts that the audience does, and they show it on the actual Adult Swim. So it's definitely a good relationship between the two.
One of the aspects of Toonami was that it went away for a while, and then Adult Swim released Tom in his chair, and he talked to the audience. They're like, hey guys, you guys have a case of the April Fools, and he talked for 10 other seconds, and that clip ended, and they played it on April Fools about, I want to say 2008-ish, to 2012, same year. And then there was a Adult Swim posted on Twitter do you guys want to bring Toonami back? Let us know what you think. And there was this massive Twitter campaign. Within a month, they brought back the show that had been dead for 4 years. And also another part of Adult Swim that's not Toonami related. They would actually have little blocks in time where you could submit your own music. So many musicians at the time, or rappers, other things, they would try and submit their music to Toonami, to Adult Swim, so that way it could be released there. Adult Swim has this large portion of expression. If you want to find something for you that's not found anywhere else, you can find it on Adult Swim because it is made by very contemporary producers, and they're very open to having anything on Adult Swim because that's what Adult Swim's about. So as you saw, we had the psychedelic, we had crude humor, we had Eastern animation that was brought to the West that had not been done so efficiently before. So if you wanted your music on Toonami, Adult Swim, I'm sorry. If you wanted your music on Adult Swim, you could do that. If you wanted your art on Adult Swim, you wanted your film, you could send it to them, and it'd actually have a likely chance of being shown on television. Whereas you couldn't do that on other channels or blogs.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of social media interaction, and Adult Swim actually premiered their the first episode of the second season of Rick and Morty on their Instagram with like I think it was like when there was just 15 seconds. So they like premiered it like clip by clip, and then they did it backwards. So the audience had to like scroll all the way down to see the first clip. So it's kind of like just trolling them.
And in terms of just music in general, this wasn't related to animation, so we didn't include it, but music in Adult Swim is actually incredibly important. Like one of the biggest electronic artists out there, Flying Lotus, if you guys know, made his start in Adult Swim purely off of just producing beats and just submitting them to Adult Swim, and became so popular that he actually has his own show. Like I went to a show like last week of like Flying Lotus, because his stuff is extremely unique and it's great for Adult Swim, but it also exposes that uniqueness to a wide audience for people to enjoy and to cultivate.
All right, just stop your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks.